I thought I would talk about the ideals of renunciation because it's so hard to understand. It's hard to understand because it's so simple. There is a practice called sannyas. And sannyas is the procedure by which many yogis enter into a sweet life by striving to live for others, striving to live for God, and not their selfish aims anymore. Certainly, any advanced yogi, any yogi who makes it, goes through this process whether they officially take sannyas or not. Very often in India, sannyas is a disgrace. People who renounce do it for gain and are sometimes more preoccupied by the world than the busy householder who is striving to live exclusively for his Lord and his family and his community. I'm talking about sannyas because it's important to think about it right now. It's an important and vital consideration for anyone who is ever going to realize God or have God manifest in one's life, to understand the very vital, basic principles of sannyas, renunciation. Sannyas, very simply, is the effort on a person's part to realize God is the Lord. To have one Lord, and that Lord is God. And to live for that Lord. To think for that Lord. To feel. To carry out one's activities. To exist for God. That's what it's for. Now, why should that be so important? Because there comes a time in a person's spiritual evolution when you realize everything else, to live any other way, is to be deluded and to live in a confused life which brings all kinds of karmas down on one's head. Like as a baby, there's nothing quite as interesting as the flap of the tablecloth as it comes down, and you just get to just pull at it and, whap away at it. What fun. And then not knowing that it's loaded with dishes up there and silverware and glasses and everything, we, living a selfish life, pull away at this fabric of life, and it comes down wailing on our head. All of these things we didn't dream. If we could have just seen a little more clearly, we would have seen you shouldn't be pulling that tablecloth, because all the stuff that attaches to it comes wailing down on your head. And to live with any other Lord than God, and with any other primacy than your own soul, is to just be playing in the incarnations with pulling down the unexpected and the undelightful on one's little crown. Sannyas is letting God be sovereign in one's life. And it's nothing much more than that. It's obeying the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's what sannyas is. So, in the process through human evolution from a selfish, animalistic attitude to a spiritual and loving and giving attitude, this sannyas, or renunciation, is the all-essential, all-important pivot point, which can be done formally or informally. I mean, it's just, what does it take to make the grade? And when will it really work for you, this whole yoga thing? When you have union, wholeness, fullness, oneness. When yourself is pouring out instead of grabbing. So sannyas is practiced by giving up the ego and the selfish life to let the soul express darn hard. Because Our ego says to us, well, this is sannyas, and it tells us you're doing this and you're doing this, you're a good person, you're going to get to heaven, you're going to have the successful life, no matter whether it's hard or difficult out there, you're going to get the real life, you're going to get the real goods. And so what happens is, after the ego letting an opportunity for the soul personality to have just a little opportunity, the ego clamps in. And it's, I'm doing sannyas. And of course, the delusion is rife. And it's a hard thing to do, as these pilgrims who spent 3 years doing sannyas will tell you how much the Lord was the Lord compared to how much the ego was adjusting the process. Tricky thing. Very tricky. Sannyas is a way to realize it. Sannyas ideally is the realized state. Sannyas is mainly considered a way to realize it. When you give up the ego and the selfish life, you get to know God, and generally not till then. Sometimes people are really lucky. God comes into the storm of their mind and the storm of their heart and says, wait a minute, I'm here and I'm loving you. And they go, oh. And that experience reminds them so powerfully of the presence of God and what the realities are that they move toward that. Very often God gives encouragements and handwritten invitations to the devotees. In fact, all the scriptures and all the avatars are inviters to the divine ballroom. So giving up ego, the selfish life, to let the soul express is sannyas. And if you keep it simple like that, then you can understand what the process is and how a vital point in one's evolution is taking place. Ego to soul. With ultimately the lordship of God and soul over the ego, instead of the ego throwing occasional attention to the soul. There are various requirements. Singles are celibate, marrieds are moderate. They moderate to 1 day every 3 weeks. And there are special practices that you get in order to help you realize this whole sannyas process. The goal is to become what's called an avadhut. In our particular form of sannyas, we're not raising swamis and swamesses or whatever. That's a new word, swames. But you see, the idea is, whether you're male or female, you become a swami in that particular philosophy, because swami refers to being established in the soul in that particular way. Our particular line of sannyas is considered to be hidden, in that we're striving to realize the state of renunciation while serving the world rather than leaving the world, kind of in the world, not of it. And so that focus leads, when fulfilled, to becoming, instead of a swami, to becoming an avadhut, which means simply abiding in the soul. But in terms of Maya, it's about the hardest thing there is. Simple thing. It's just a matter of what comes first, and the ego is saying everything but God, generally. Even our religious pretensions come before God and real spirit. Strange business. A person would spend about 3 years as a probationary. 3 years or more if they choose to do more before becoming intermediate. 3 years as a probationary sannyas person. And you can be married or single to go through this. And occasionally we have a member of a marriage, like one person takes sannyas and the partner doesn't. But generally we prefer that it be husband and wife together who take probationary sannyas. Doesn't have to be, but it's based on my meditations whether I feel be beneficial or destructive. One spends those 3 years in various forms purifying oneself. From the initial process where you stand before a sacred fire and throw rice and symbolically throw your ego, your sense of self into it, and then strive to maintain that fire of spirit in your life. You strive to realize that the fire ceremony is symbolic of living in spirit and offering yourself up to have any impediment, any impurity, consumed, burned up by spirit. That's your goal. Just, God, I'm going to walk out there in life hoping you will consume my impurities. And that's what probationary sannyas is. It's walking in the Lord, striving to be mindful of the Lord in spirit, wanting the Lord to burn up all impurities, mainly of selfishness. Now, I don't mean to say that you're bad if you're selfish. We're practicing this lofty attainment, and it involves giving up selfishness. That's just the name of the game. Very often today in our society, psychologists and others are trying to train us to be more selfish. And The Art of Selfishness, I believe, is a book. Anyway. And the yogi says, opposite way. And of course, Christ said the same thing. Other phenomenal beings talk about striving to live selflessly. But some people can't hack it. The ego gets too uptight and too swollen and bloated. And when it's too swollen and bloated, then it bothers one's existence. So, no blame. It's something that will happen in one's soul evolution sometime. So the 3 first years are probationary and purifying. And the beauty of this particular form of sannyas we practice is people can, after various periods of time, withdraw if they don't want to go on to the next step, this kind of thing. Like after intermediate sannyas, before they take full sannyas, people can leave then also, if they don't want to take full sannyas, if they realize something in their life. They don't wish to move forward regarding that particular thing, or because of it. So, purification, living in the Holy Spirit. During this time of purification and probationary sannyas, a person weighs one's whole life in terms of spirit, and tries to let go of that which denies God and which denies spirit. You weigh issues, and you let spirit consume your views to the extent that they become very crystal clear and pure. You get the eye of discernment. You're able to see what is going to lead Godward, like vidya and avidya, the truth that leads Godward versus knowledge that leads away from God. And it's a period of constant dedication, rededication, remembering the giving of oneself to the Lord. So that moves on then as a result of intensive purification, abiding in it, striving one's best to be pure, free of egoism, that's the main impurity, free to know and sense and love and abide in and appreciate the soul. Then the next stage that comes, and it's, first off, it's going to be an initiation, of course, but the actual happening has to be the development of that pure state, the development of the consciousness that's beyond the ego. And so intermediate sannyas builds on the purification of the 3 years, the striving to get free of egoism. And this doesn't mean people have made it in every department of their lives. Like we're human beings. It means that they have made that effort in every part of their lives and are proceeding toward it with dedication and self-giving and by the prompting of their soul. This next level is developmental. And in this developmental level of intermediate sannyas, the goal is to tune in with God and one's soul and strive to bring the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of spirit, into manifestation in all areas prompted by the soul. Striving to bring the kingdom of heaven here on earth, in one's life and in one's society as best one can. As a result of striving to be free of desires and pure, one is now striving to invoke the divine. from the promptings of the ego? No. To give up ego as best one can and in a selfless way say, Lord, how may I serve? And how may I ask through prayer, since you love me in my prayer, how may I ask you to shine more fully, more freely, and more powerfully in your creation? So that's what's happening in the intermediate sannyas initiation, special techniques, possibilities and practices for invoking the kingdom of heaven, first getting as clearly as one can established in the soul, then invoking the kingdom of God to come into expression and manifestation in one's life. So selfless in the soul, we invoke and accept God's light and help. That's intermediate sannyas. In life, we try this in our lives and in society. Sri Ramakrishna said, the goal is not just to realize God, the goal is to help divinize, make more spiritual one's life and one's surroundings, till ultimately, through one's loving service, everybody knows about God and is having an experience of the Lord, each in their own way, without ramming it down anybody's throat, but through making it available. And so Sri Ramakrishna is so strongly emphasizing divinizing. In fact, Sri Aurobindo and others also, and Christ was manifesting this divinizing aptitude. We're striving to get to that state within our own being when we can be a part of prayer and love that helps divinize, make more spiritual the life on this planet, certainly the life around us. So the goal, as you've heard me say many times, is not just to realize, but to express. And hopefully in sannyas there's been enough letting go of the selfishness that there can finally be soul expressing. At least that's the ideal, and it is that to which the whole intermediate sannyas is bent, focused, that there can be a selfless manifestation, a selfless expression of one's soul. So that's what's happening, and whether you're interested in sannyas or whatever, I didn't just come up here to beat my chops. You get deep in yoga, you not only realize your soul and the God of your heart and the oneness, you've got to be open to the second half at least 50% of it. I mean, it's just certainly realization, but that realization is nothing, really. You haven't realized anything unless there is this move of expression of God within your being, your divine soul, God-given, coming out. Your ego goes in, God comes out. It's more spirit, more consciousnus. Anulom's going in, Vilom coming out. So I, at this time, encourage you, whatever your path, to sense your soul and to let it out. The world is desperate. The world is in greater poverty because of people's lack of soul expression than it is in greater than any other kind of poverty. Lack of money, lack of food, lack of hygiene. There are a lot of poverties on this planet. No poverty is greater than the poverty that we're experiencing where people are denying their soul is right to shine and express. That's the greatest poverty of mankind. This is called the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness. Too many souls not allowed through ignorance to come through. So whatever you're doing, get on with it. Have realization and allow. Now your ego can't express. It's got to get out of the way. And that's why it's subtle. That's why you have to really study and think and meditate. But the soul, not only we want to realize it, we want to let it express. And there are various ways to do that. I invite all whose hearts are kind of touched by this, who say, yeah, that's what I want. Married couples or single people, you want to take this big step, and it's a biggie, and it's a beauty. It scares people. And I'd like to now, in conclusion, give you 2 exercises that give you some feeling of what sannyas is about, what renunciation is about, for the benefit of every walking human being who will one day be at the doorstep, striving to realize how to get into the soul and abide in it. So here are 2 simple techniques and practices. The first is the sleep exercise. You renounce every day when you go to sleep. You could sit out there on the curb watching your car all night to be sure it's there, but you'd be very exhausted in a day, you know. Somehow you got to trust, well, suppose your car's in the garage. You just go to sleep thinking it's going to be there the next morning, and you just can't control it all night. Even if you're beside it, somebody bigger than you could take it. And your kids or your friends, your relatives, you know, you just have to trust some higher power that they're going to be there in the morning because time for you to sleep. And that your shoes are going to be there when you need them to walk to work, and that, you know, and that your work will still be there, your office, your business. Their clothes are still going to be in your closet, and there's still going to be money in your bank account in the morning. It's still going to be. Every night you sleep, you become a renunciant. In fact, for many people, that's the only soul experience they ever get. When they go to sleep really deeply and calmly, they experience some of their soul. Now, the phenomenal thing is your soul is strong enough to help you through life. People don't even know it exists, so they're sure it's not capable, they don't know it exists. And that's a great tragedy. And this practice is to stay awake and recall the sleep process in which you just let go of everything for a period of hours. You just let go of the world. God's going to have to run the world. There may be a crisis. They may push the button. But going to sleep, God's going to have to run it now. I mean, I have been mentally thinking about running it and doing my affairs all day. But tonight, sorry, I just not up to running it tonight. God, or somebody, or nobody, who cares? Tonight I'm sleeping. That relaxation is a perfect example of renunciation. It's not turning your back on your responsibilities, it's accepting the responsibility to sleep. But you just let God run the world for 6-8 hours. It's God's play. This gives you an incredible sense of freedom, and that freedom enables you to experience your soul. So let's take about 3 or 4 minutes. I'd like you to just shed running things subtly, maintaining them or anything. Just let go, think it's in God's hands, and just feel in your meditation like you've given up everything. It'll be there if God wants in 3 or 4 minutes. For you, your kid will still be alive. Various things will still be going on. The world won't end. Get used to that. That's the heart of sannyas. So, each in your own way, feel like you're just shedding the world for 3 or 4 minutes. Don't have to run a certain anything. Just be. Don't have to be in charge of being either. All right. That's the sleep exercise that helps a person realize sannyas, the ideals of renunciation. Now, the next one is if there's no desirer, the ego becomes very small. As long as there's a desirer, the ego is pretty big. People think that means just go through life like a mediocre blob. And of course, the goal is to just calm down the ego so the soul can express. You become really a house of fire. You really go. But if you can just take desire breaks, just sit there without desiring anything, that weakens the ego so much that the soul can be sensed. You just take a break. Does this mean you shouldn't be constructive or whatever? Well, you see, it's just that changeover that people get caught in that they don't make. They take a bridge and then they just stand in the middle of the bridge. They don't go over to the new land. And that's one of the problems of people who are renunciants. They don't go all the way. They stop on the bridge and wonder what's happening, somewhere between sensing the murmurings of the soul and the murmurings of the ego, and so they do nothing. They become lackadaisical. They don't express, and when they express, they're incompetent. It's a horrible thing. Of course, you can't blame yoga for the incompetence. The situation is one of yoga being skill in action. So anyway, and the soul is certainly capable. It's God himself abiding in you. So what happens is people think very often to have no desires is to just become mediocre. What happens is that's a subtle desire. There's a desire to be mediocre and tamasic as can be, and tamas guna dominates, and that's not sannyas at all. Letting tamas guna dominate, you got to renounce tamas guna, even if it's comfy. You got to renounce it, let go of it, to discover what an incredible dynamic force abides in you for good. Anyway, the second exercise is to just take a desire break. Just be still 5 minutes and say for the next 5 minutes, whatever desire comes to my mind, I'm not going to desire it. I'll desire it later if necessary. And strive to live with no desire. No desire. Not I wish my nose wouldn't itch, or I wish that fly would go away, or I wish that car wouldn't make so much noise. No, you don't wish that. Or I wish I could go home and eat. No, you don't wish that. You don't wish anything. You don't desire or yearn for anything. You just enjoy what's left when you're not desiring. The ego calms down enough for you to touch your soul. Or I wish I were better, or I wish I were worse. No, for now, don't wish anything. That ego is ultimately going to just let go, allow a more heavenly life. Got it? Okay. Let's take a 4-minute desire break. Desires kill people, you know. They just keep the mind and the heart going so fast. They help burn us up. No desires for the next few minutes. Right? Isn't it refreshing? Note what you feel like. Don't you feel clearer, freer, lighter? It helps you make soul contact if you just turn off your desirer for a few minutes. The other thing is to turn off your thinker. Turn off your thinker and your desirer a few minutes a day. What's left in back of that is your soul. You've turned off your supply line to the ego. I wonder how many times I've been saying that in my life. And I've said it so much. I wonder. Renunciation is renunciation of darkness to embrace the light. Bliss is said to be a desireless desire. Those of you who experience bliss, we're not talking astral bliss, we're talking that juicy stuff. But if you're having bliss, it's a sign that for a period of time you have given up desire. Because you don't get bliss unless you have turned off your desirer for a while. And that's what bliss is. It's a sign that you turned off your desirer, your ego of desire. And in the bliss, then, is a temptation to lay back. That's why very often you got to go beyond the bliss in order for the soul to express. If you're in the bliss, you're not in the soul. If you're in the bliss, it means you're near the soul. You got to go into it more. But bliss is good. It helps the weary human being to find something that's satisfying. You see, regularly a person goes out, the desires don't get satisfied. And finally he finds, if I just had sat here and meditated, I could add bliss, which is better than anything I've ever been thrilled with out there. And the soul says, finally they found out. Well, come on in. So bliss is there to make you satisfied. Nothing external, no physical pleasure. It measures up to bliss. And so that's why people need a good amount of bliss till they're convinced. My goodness. That's one of the definitions of God. God is the most relishable. And if anything delights you more than God, you don't know God. You just haven't met Him. Really. And, when I'm talking about sannyas being overcoming selfishness and everything, that doesn't mean people who don't do sannyas are being spoken of negatively here. We're talking about the spiritual path, and it's my job to talk about the spiritual path. And I'm not here, going, I'm talking flat out about what this beautiful, wonderful thing is. And if people want to feel bad that they're selfish for not doing sannyas, well, recall, of course they're selfish. People are living in a state of maya and confusion. So each is overcoming selfishness in his or her own way. Selfishness is part of the, when you line up to get all your little things that you need to get through life, you go to this big, very big place, and you say, I'll have selfishness, please. They say, oh yeah, we got lots of that around here. And people of selfishness and possessiveness and immoderate liking, immoderate disliking. And renunciation is realizing there's been a horrible mistake. I've come to the wrong boot camp. I don't even belong here. There's been a horrible mistake. What am I doing with all these kleshas? Why have I been holding on to these afflictions? There's been a horrible mistake. Now, who made this? Oh, I wandered into the wrong place. I see. Turns out I'm a spiritual being. This is a spiritual world. Wow. You wandered in the wrong place. Why the heart is dark. Renunciation is just wandering in the right place by various karmas. Well, I'll be darned. I've been doing it all wrong for multi-lifetimes. Wowee. Same boat most everybody else is.